I serve as Executive Director of the Association of Professional Schools of International Affairs, but since that is just the longest name in the history of everything, we mostly call it APSIA. So as you hear us refer to that acronym, that's what we're talking about. We bring together the community of graduate schools around the world that specialize in teaching international affairs. And I'm delighted to be joined on this call by my colleague Stephanie Jackson from the Nunn School of International Affairs at Georgia Tech. Stephanie wears a number of hats at the Nunn School, including student advisor, career services director, occasional admissions stand-in, and otherwise all-around guru of all things IR at the Nunn School. Yeah. We're going to walk through some different things that you may hear from students and some ways of thinking about how you talk to your students about the global marketplace that we're in. We'll talk a little bit about how you may advise them to think about further education in this field, and then we'll round it out with hopefully sharing what wisdom we have to answer any of your questions. As I mentioned to the folks who were on earlier, we will have copies of the slides as well as a recording of this presentation available afterwards. And we'll also share some resources at the end to help you continue to build out your knowledge and provide some good bits of information and support to your students. So with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to Stephanie and we'll kick things off.
Thank you, Carmen. Good afternoon or good morning or good evening, wherever you might be today. Hello, my name is Stephanie Jackson. As Carmen mentioned, I am the Assistant Director for Advising and Professional Development here at Sam Nunn School of International Affairs at Georgia Tech in Atlanta, Georgia. Just a little bit of background about me. I have been here at Georgia Tech within the Nunn School for about 12 years. I started here my higher education career as what was known as the International Plan Editor. And the International Plan here at Georgia Tech is a program that is designed to help our students build international competence within their undergraduate degrees. So currently, like I said, I'm the Assistant Director for Advising and Professional Development, which means I work with undergraduate students, both our majors and our minors, and I also work with our graduate students on their career development. My background is I have a bachelor's degree in political science and a graduate master's degree in international development studies. So with all of that said, I'm glad to be here to talk with you about how we can work to help students better prepare for the global workplace. So what are we hearing from the students that we are talking to? In your advising conversations, what topics or interests do students express passion around? So some of the more common ideas that we hear are an interest in travel, culture, and language. So this can be expressed through a desire to study abroad, to learn or develop language proficiency, perhaps engaging other cultures, other manners of doing business, working abroad, and the like. Some students may be interested in tackling big problems, poverty, environment, disease, responding to solving societal ills through practical or policy efforts. Students may also be discussing an interest in politics and government. So that might be representing various constituencies or representing the government abroad, diplomacy efforts, working in intelligence, the intelligence community, maybe even some local, state, or federal opportunities. Some students may enjoy the process of debate and argue. So looking at competing philosophies, maybe some evolving ideologies, looking at debate teams, looking at law and constitutional issues more in depth. I think of a student that I have that is really into religious ideology studies. And he likes to say that religions and belief systems have always interested him because they are a direct reflection of a culture's values. So he states that embedded in some of the world's oldest religions are thousands of years of philosophical debate and ideological evolution. Every day, I get the opportunity to interact with students from these different ideologies and cultures because Georgia Tech students come from all over the country and the world. My interactions with these students only further my belief that understanding breeds cooperation. End quote. So he is studying economics and international affairs, and he wants that major to help him learn the data analysis needed for economics and the critical thinking that comes with majoring in international affairs. So for him, it is the disciplines that allow him to see that economics can motivate international policy and international relations can drive economic decisions. Students may also be interested in a call to service or helping people through these helping professions. That could involve volunteering or teaching abroad. It may be an interest in service learning and starting to figure out how this translates into social impact. They talk a lot about the desire to see social change, so an interest in human rights or combating human trafficking, social justice movements, and other forms of social activism. And then also what I call I like this but not that. These are just students who are explorers. They're curious, they have a passion to innovate, they even might be driven by the prospect of global opportunities. I have an example of an alumnus of my college who stated, quote, I learned how to identify, analyze, and solve problems, to think critically, analytically, and creatively. This has served me well, especially working on corporate investment banking transactions, as well as forays into startups, real estate, and other business ventures, end quote. So there are a variety of different interests that our students may come to us with. And as advisors, we want to guide them in channeling these into potential careers. And regardless of the majors they may have selected, all of these interests can have a global component and can be explored in the framework of a global workplace. So on the next slide, we put together these pieces. Most of our students are very surprised at the flexibility that can come with any major. A degree in engineering can lead to a career in finance, while a history degree can lead to a job in the healthcare field. Many times we are asked, what can I do with this major? And we talk with students about the connection between majors and career choices. And there are some straight lines from one major to one particular career, particularly with the technical degrees in STEM-related fields. But increasingly, employers are seeking candidates, and they do not always use major as the criterion for accepting applications. Oftentimes, internships and full-time positions for undergrad are posted and open to all majors or a diverse range of majors. That all said, what we're looking at here, we're looking at majors, interests, and careers with a variety of examples of positions and jobs and the majors and the interests that can lead to those particular careers. So I want to point out on this slide the range of disciplines. There are majors in the humanities, as well as in the social sciences, in the sciences, and in the engineering fields as well, listed here. Many careers, even down to the local level, have an international component to them. For an example, I have an alumnus who had a master's degree in international relations and worked for the city of Atlanta here. So that is surely considered a local job, working for the city. Her role was Deputy Director of the Office of International Affairs. And in that role, she was charged with maintaining the city's relationships with the international community, promoting international trade opportunities, and encouraging foreign direct investment, thereby raising the global profile of the city of Atlanta. So while her job is local, it is inherently international with a global impact. And all of these careers and positions on this slide can be obtained with a degree or training in international relations. So a couple of examples of untraditional paths to internationally oriented careers. I want to share some. Another student of mine who graduated with a master's in international affairs now serves as the Public Affairs and Communications Associate in the National Government Relations Office of Coca-Cola. So he obtained this position after a stint as an intern in Coca-Cola's Public Affairs Department. He had previously interned with the Carter Center here in Atlanta, but before he started our program, he had earned his undergraduate degree in music education. and he was a music teacher and a program director in Atlanta area schools for about 5 to 6 years. He had lived abroad in Thailand and he had developed some foreign language proficiency and also had been a volunteer with some NGOs in Mexico, Uganda, and Botswana. And through these experiences, he had developed a skill set in intercultural management, communication, and independent and collaborative work. He says, and I quote, "I use my graduate school experience daily, evaluating business environments, tracking socio-political events and the impact they have on our business, understanding the various political processes around the world, and understanding how our business has adapted to the varied countries we are a part of are all elements of my job where I use the skills and knowledge that I gained at the Nunn School." I have another example of another student who graduated with a master's in international affairs. She works as an information security analyst with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. She earned a minor in computer science after completing a study abroad with a computer science theme in Spain, and she finished her undergraduate degree in economics. She held an internship with the Committee on Homeland Security in both the U.S. House of Representatives and in the Senate, and she was awarded a National Science Foundation scholarship to pursue a career in cybersecurity, cyber diplomacy, which covered the cost of her graduate degree. She said that her aim was to develop the skills necessary to be a future leader with a full understanding of not only the technical side of cyberspace, but also the economic and policy side, to assist our nation's policymakers and international leaders on how to mutually secure our physical and cyberspace borders and critical infrastructure. And if I may plug an APSIA resource here to share with your students, the career directors at the APSIA institutions, along with the APSIA staff, we have curated something we call the International Career Guide, which can be viewed and downloaded from the APSIA website, and I'm sure Carmen can share that link with you a little bit later on. But this career guide also breaks down career options in the global workplace by sector, by subject area. So each section provides a brief description as well as a sample of employers and tips to gaining employment in that sector and key skill sets and experiences that are necessary to be most competitive in that particular field. So please check that out on the APSIA website. I think she's just put it in the chat box, that link, and please share that, make that available to your students. So to discuss career options with these different disciplines. So studying a single discipline is no longer enough. It is key to be interdisciplinary and intercultural and have a multilingual education. That's what's becoming more and more necessary to advance in the global workplace. International affairs is an interdisciplinary field, and it prepares students for a variety of career paths. So what we're looking at on this slide, communications and media, public relations, business, consulting, development and conflict resolution, energy and the environment, education, human rights and law, science and technology, security and intelligence. Those are some of the more prevalent career paths. While historically it is thought that international relations is equivalent to government, and to be quite honest, truthfully, a majority of my students, when they begin our undergraduate program, want to work for the United Nations or they want to work for the State Department. According to APSIA, approximately 43% of 2016 graduates ended up in the private sector. And I believe that number probably even increased for 2017. The private sector is now the largest employer of our graduates, followed by government and public sector, and then the nonprofit, NGO, and multilateral organizations. So when students think, or when we think of government, we're including the U.S. Department of State, the Department of Defense, Homeland Security, and intelligence agencies. But there are also, let's not forget, the Department of Agriculture, Commerce, the Centers for Disease Control, Energy, Education, Transportation, Treasury, etc. So even though there's a lot of uncertainty about hiring and budget cuts with the administration, the interest in national security does remain high. And interest in government should not exclude local government opportunities. So there are state and national offices, as I gave the example earlier from the city of Atlanta. And working for the government may also be working for a royal family. I have a student who works for one of the royal families in another country now. So there are opportunities to work with royal families of other countries, as well as consular offices and embassies of other countries. Nonprofit organizations, non-governmental organizations include the American Bar Association, CARE, Catholic Relief Services, Center for International Private Enterprise, Habitat for Humanity, and others, NGOs and foundations around the world. For-profit private companies such as Anheuser-Busch, Bank of America, Deloitte, GE, Fleischmann Hilliard, Google, Home Depot, the Walt Disney Company. There are intergovernmental organizations like the World Bank, of course, the United Nations, the European Union, and other organizations. There are students who have gone on to start their own companies. Entrepreneurship is definitely growing. Travel and tourism companies, global health and sanitation programs, global commerce and technology initiatives, etc. So the world is open to our students, and there are lots of opportunities in a variety of different fields. But there are particular skills that are necessary to find success in this global workplace. So talking about the skills that are necessary, what do they need? In this conversation about skills, particularly the skill set of younger workers and those being prepared for today's global workplace, there's a lot of conversation amongst employers and career services about what those skills might be. The National Association of Colleges and Employers refers to this as career readiness, or the competencies that can prepare college graduates for a successful transition to the workplace. So anecdotally, I can tell you that employers I talk to emphasize the importance of soft skills as key to hiring and then to eventual success and promotion on the job. So that is communication, that is teamwork, that's problem solving orientation, emotional intelligence. These key abilities are what employers are screening for, and it's imperative that we help our students find ways to develop these skills throughout their college career. So for careers in international relations, I'd like to point out a few that would give them an edge in the global workplace. So first, having professional experience. This can be local, it can be online, virtual, it can be national, international. Exposure and experience in the world of work to understand what it is like working in a given industry, organization, or a particular job. So students, we want them to be able to demonstrate personal accountability and effective work habits. That means being punctual, working productively with others, and strong time and workload management. Also, the ability to learn from their mistakes. So having that professional experience in the office. The next thing is communication skills. This is evidenced by excellent written and verbal communication skills, the ability to write in various forms, be it briefing papers and memos, research papers, reports, white papers, etc. Also to have very strong public speaking skills and strong presentation ability. Also have proficiency in more than one language or at least an aptitude for learning additional languages. This is tied to having a global or intercultural fluency and the ability to value, respect, and learn from diverse perspectives. Students should also have strong analytical and quantitative skills. So having these skills will showcase an ability to obtain, interpret, and use knowledge and facts and data for human capital and other business elements. This includes critical thinking and problem solving, so the ability to use sound reasoning to analyze issues and to make decisions and overcome problems. Technical skills is really about leveraging the existing digital technologies and adapting to new and emerging technologies ethically and efficiently to solve problems, to complete tasks, and accomplish goals. So this could include skills with graphic design and social media, data analysis, coding, of course, computer programming, use of geographic information systems, GIS, and modeling, program software, etc. Understanding project management. So this includes having skills that can leverage their strengths and skills to organize, prioritize, and to delegate. So students should be able to build collaborative relationships and work within a team structure in all stages of managing a project or a program. So they don't necessarily need to have a, project management certification at the start of their career, but they should be familiar with the initiation, planning, execution, launch, control, tracking, delivery, and close elements of a project or program. And then also networking. Networking to create their own network, build their own, I like to call personal advisory board. So teach them or encourage them to have mentors and coaches, peers that they can bounce ideas off of, to make contacts with industry insiders, develop those relationship building habits that build a network, which can be key, to their career management. So these are all critical skills and abilities that we should be advising our students to learn. So next, I want to share some ways that we can go about learning these skills. There we go. So getting published. So what they want to do, we want to encourage our students, to get internships before we get to publications. Internships and work studies. That's how they build these skills, through hands-on experience gained through college. That's really the most critical hiring variable. That's what employers are really looking for. The more internship experience gained, the better. We don't want that to interfere with them completing their degrees, of course, but if they can get 2 or 3 internships done, that will certainly make them more competitive for full-time positions. So back to publication. So getting published is something that is certainly key. It helps them showcase their excellent communication skills, both verbal and written. A lot of our students run academic or undergraduate journals. There's a lot of those out there. There are also research opportunities with faculty that can lead to being published. Also, there are social media outlets that could provide opportunities. Recruiters are basically looking for strong writing skills, and that can be developed through being published. So developing a skill in writing clear, concise communications, that is something that comes with practice. So being published can contribute to brands. They can showcase their knowledge in a particular area, and that may be of interest to a company. I'm thinking of one example of another one of my alums who also finished with a master's in international affairs. She developed an interest in fair trade and sustainable investment while she was in school. And she began to flesh out this interest through papers and assignments in her courses. And she had done a considerable amount of research with faculty to get published. She was able to refer back to her portfolio of writing and work in this area during her interviews as a Presidential Management Fellows finalist, and was offered a Presidential Management Fellowship position with the Department of Commerce in the International Trade Administration. So that's just an example of how you can use your interest area and your writing to land a position. Also, maybe perhaps pursue a minor or a certificate or an additional major. So taking courses outside of the primary major to help develop a concentration. Employers tend to view this additional breadth as a benefit. So if a student is studying an engineering or a technical discipline, perhaps a minor in business or a foreign language would be attractive for global employers. Or if your student is studying in the liberal arts, maybe a minor in business or communications and digital media could be an attractive specialization. So increasingly, employers are looking for candidates that stand out, and having a specialization is just one manner of doing so. Study abroad, travel abroad, learn a language. Fellowship programs that offer funding for international experiences, either to study or to intern, or they may even pay for graduate school, or finding professional intern or traineeship experiences with governments or NGO offices. All of this provides valuable benefit and brings prestige to their resume. Lead something. So by that, I mean maybe having an executive board level position, be a president or director or head of a committee for a particular student group. That's preferred over just membership in an organization. However, extracurricular participation is certainly looked upon favorably, regardless of your leadership role. But having that shows evidence of an ability to work well in teams, how to manage others, and perhaps manage budgets, programs, time, etc. Also, students should find ways to get involved in international or globally themed events and organizations on and off campus. Perhaps participate in International Education Week, or have them join Model UN, or apply for a traineeship with ISIC or ISDE or other organizations, or maybe they can join a campus club on culture and language, or a topic of interest like sustainability, environmental issues, climate change, human rights, and the like. And also to join professional organizations and take advantage of the student rate and young professionals networks. They can also network with alumni, talk to professors, and make connections. All of this is practice or polishing those interpersonal networking skills. So, as advisors, our role is to guide students to make wise choices, to maximize the time in college. So, in working with undergraduates, there is a timeline to this. Many are not able to secure internships in their first year of school. A lot of internships are geared towards sophomores, juniors, maybe even seniors. But they may be able to study abroad or start a new language. So advisors, we can help them craft a timeline to build upon their skills and assess their career readiness throughout their years of college. So as they take coursework, they develop an interest in a particular minor, or begin to formulate interest in a research topic that they can cover throughout different courses. In effect, they are developing an expertise. They can join organizations early on as a member and then take on increasing responsibility and use that experience to build connections and then network with other leaders and organizations. As they begin to search and then interview for internships, they have experiences they can talk about: leadership, language, research, study abroad, etc. And with additional internships, they then become more competitive for full-time positions. So our immediate goal is to prepare students for that first job out of school. Yet we want to equip them with helpful strategies to navigate upward in this increasingly competitive global market. And that could include graduate school as a strategy, if not right after finishing the undergraduate degree, perhaps after a few years of work. So with that, I'm going to ask Carmen to talk more about, if the decision is made to pursue an international relations degree, how would they proceed?
Thanks, Stephanie. As always, such great practical advice based on your student experiences. As Stephanie talked about, increasingly students are, or should be, thinking about how further study fits into their long-term career plans, and particularly how they can deepen a skill set in the direction of a broader profession. So what I'd like to do is walk you through some questions that you can have students ask themselves, and then also some key touch points as they think about their academic planning, think about their professional planning, and when graduate school might make sense. One of the key questions students are going to need to answer is, what will they study? What is the structure of the program? Is it highly flexible? Is it highly prescriptive? Are they going to be taking a lot of classes that deepen a set of knowledge or broaden a set of knowledge? What is the program that they are going to be experiencing in a particular degree program? Whether it's a Master of International Affairs, a JD, an MBA, a Master of Social Work, MPH, whatever it is, how is the program built and structured, and what are the skills and competencies that you're going to pick up along that particular journey? And how does that match up with the skills and competencies and structures and the ways that the student thrives and wants to gain as a result of that experience? Helping students understand their qualifications relative to the admissions criteria. As we all know, there's not necessarily a particular number that will get a kid into a school or keep a kid out of a school, but you can help them realize which schools are a bit of a stretch and which schools they're going to fit very comfortably into that particular set of criteria. And then that way the student will also understand their comfort level with being stretched or being in an environment where they're surrounded by people who, at least academically or professionally, have achieved similar things to what they've achieved. A key question that a lot of students miss is about the living environment. They're going to spend 2 years probably in a particular place, and they should want to be in that place. For those of you who are in big cities, if you have students who have really had a hard time adjusting to city life and want to return to an environment that's maybe a little more suburban or a little more rural, having them think about schools that are in those kinds of places. And vice versa. If you have a student who loves being in the city, perhaps reminding them that they're going to also have to make that adjustment if they move to College Station, Texas, or Kyoto, Japan, from New York City. It's going to be an additional part of the adjustment within the graduate school and professional development piece. So getting them to think about those non-academic components as well. Weighing on a lot of students' minds these days, of course, is the question of financial affordability. So helping students think from the very beginning, even as they're undergrads, this is my 5-year plan. I'm going to finish my undergrad, I'm going to work for a couple years, build up enough financial resources to then go back to grad school 2 or 3 years after I finish. Or if I have to go straight through or want to go straight through, I need to start applying for these kinds of scholarships or fellowships. And we can talk about that a little later if you all would find that helpful. But making sure students understand that the financial planning piece and the application piece have to happen simultaneously in order for any of this to be achievable. But the most important question on this list, I think, is the what's next piece. A lot of students, including me, go to grad school because they don't know what else to do with themselves. But having them think about the professional fit that then informs all of these other questions can be a critical piece of the planning. So encouraging them to read job descriptions for positions that they may not be anywhere near qualified for yet, but sound really sexy and attractive, so that they can start to understand what are the skills I need, what are the competencies. I read 10 descriptions and the 5 that sounded really awesome more looked like this than like that. So let me move in that direction compared to another one. So getting them to start to think about the big professional touch points that are important to them, how much they deal with people versus how much they do research with books or the internet, whether they're in their country or in a different country, whether they're working really hands-on, doing work that has an immediate sense of return, or if they're tackling those big challenges that Stephanie talked about that require a lot of very little bits of chipping away at a much bigger, more complicated problem. So helping them conceptualize a long-term professional plan, even if it's not a specific job in a specific context, can help to inform them to understand when it makes sense to go to grad school and what kinds of skills and competencies and program is really going to be the fit for them. Also helping them understand the kinds of pieces they're going to need to build for a successful application. A lot of this starts when they're undergrads. Stephanie talked a lot about the importance and ability to build out making sure students know those are 2 different things. Making sure that if they do study abroad, they get transcripts from each institution they've attended, or if they came in with college credit as a high school student. Helping them prepare for the GRE or the GMAT or the TOEFL if they're a student whose first language isn't English and they didn't study at an English-speaking university. So getting them to start to build that into their planning as well. The personal statements and supplemental essays, this is something that a lot of students have trouble wrapping their head around. So we'll talk through some questions that you can give to them to structure their thinking. But that's also, again, helping them think about themselves, think about their professional plans and how all of this fits into a larger goal for their life. And also encouraging them and reminding them to stay in touch with faculty, to stay in touch with advisors or administrators, and to build some of those close relationships, even from as early as freshman and sophomore year, because they're going to need those letters of recommendation. And I talk to a lot of students who say, oh, I graduated 5 years ago and I haven't been in touch with a faculty member since, and now I need them to write a letter about how amazing I am. And that's hard for faculty to do. I'm sure you all have had that request as well. So making sure they build that into their thinking. I want to cultivate relationships with my faculty, with alumni, with advisors, with peers, so that when I need to draw on that expertise, it's there for me. And again, thinking about the financial aid piece and all of the nuts and bolts that go along with that as well. So how can we help students think about crafting personal essays and statements that are going to be compelling and distinct? I'm sure many of you read the same essay over and over again. It starts with a quote from Gandhi, and it goes through about how much they love things, and on and on and on. And every essay after a while, like that, starts to sound the same. And for our schools that are truly reading 400, 500, 1,000 applications, essay number 501 that sounds like that, it's hard to discern between candidates. So students who can really tell a compelling personal narrative about their journey, that can talk about those work and those volunteer, those life and language experiences that they've had, as Stephanie described, and how all of that informs who they are today and why that individual today is motivated to go to a particular grad school at a particular time. And the more they can craft it to the strengths of that grad school and that program, the stronger their case can be. So who were they? Who are they? And then that critical piece of who they want to be. And again, it doesn't have to pinpoint a specific job or a specific time, but having a student think about how is that program a springboard into a newer version of themselves? What do they want to do with this degree when they have it? How is this part of the continuation of that journey? So getting students to compartmentalize, for lack of a better word, those three phases of their life, who they were, who they are, and who they want to be through this program, can help them create a really strong essay, because only they can tell that story. Only they have lived that particular life and maybe overcome some challenge or had a distinct experience working with other people that really stands out as their specific narrative, and a school can then understand who that student is and how they'll fit into the life of that program. And that's a critical piece, because as you all know, schools really look at these questions holistically. They want to see a student's chance of success in a program, and that comes both from the academic piece and the professional piece. So that's why they want to see a resume. That's why they want those letters of recommendation, transcripts, the essays. They want to make sure that a student is set up for success, both during the program and after it. And then they also want to see how that particular student is going to help everybody else succeed. So some of those really distinct components that Stephanie talked about, project management, leadership, research, publications, language study, all of that help inform a student's contributions to the classroom and help everybody else's experience be richer because of it. So the more that students can set themselves apart by doing this kind of work, whether it is online, internationally, on the local level, on the state level, and we, if you'd like, can think about how some of those opportunities exist, all of that informs what the kid brings into the classroom and makes everybody better and stronger. So making sure that students are hopefully comforted and reminded of the fact that this is not just about how you did on the GRE or what your GPA is. It really is about everything that you bring into the classroom and what that means for you and for everybody else. So with that kind of thinking in mind, we'll transition in a minute to opportunities for you all to ask questions. Please feel free to type them in that chat box on the far right-hand side of your screen. But I did want to share some resources with you that we here at APSIA have put together. First and foremost, we run a series of events, both as an association and then individual schools, to help students in particular connect with programs that might make sense for them, get information about different opportunities and options. We do run a monthly webinar called Best Practices in Applying for Graduate School that unpacks some of those slides that I shared with you in greater depth and gives students a 12-month plan to think through applying to grad school. We know that fellowships and scholarships, whether it's for study abroad, internships, work, grad school, young professionals work, however it is, can be critically important to student success. So we have a directory on our website of lots of different fellowships and scholarships. We also have a number of resources about our member programs in general. So students can go and see the kinds of schools that have passed the APSIA application process and demonstrated not only the depth of their international affairs work, but also that critical P in APSIA is for professional schools. So how these schools generate and create professionals in the field of international affairs, broadly defined. And then as Stephanie mentioned, we have our international career guide where students can unpack lots of different opportunities, get some tips, think about some employers that they may have never thought of or heard of before, and get a chance to dive a little deeper into the different aspects of the field. We're on a variety of social media channels, as you can see, where we regularly share internship and job opportunities, fellowships, student stories, faculty stories, all kinds of things that help make this a little less obtuse and a little bit more personal for students so they can find lots of different information and opportunities. And in particular, we are going to be either online or on the ground doing a variety of activities, and I hope that your students and you will come and join us. We will have, starting July 25th, but particularly in the fall, a chance for students to really get their own personal questions answered and to interact directly with representatives from our different schools. So we'll be online, as I said, in July as well as in November. We'll be in Atlanta, Montreal, New York, DC, London. Bianca, I hope we'll see some of your students there. Paris and Madrid. We'll also be doing events in College Station, Texas. That event is actually for advisors. And so any of you who might be based in Texas, this one is for you and not necessarily for your students. From April 24th through the 27th, my colleague will be essentially between Cleveland and Ann Arbor, Michigan, but doing a lot of stops along the way. And if you'd like to shoot me a message, I'm happy to connect you with him to make sure that perhaps if it makes sense with his schedule, he'll be able to come by and talk to students directly or to you about many different opportunities in the field. We also, as I said, do a lot of work online, whether it's a webinar like this, which we do on a monthly basis, but we also do one-offs on a regular basis for schools and students. So if you wanted to put together a presentation for your class or for your fellow advisors who couldn't make it today, any of those kinds of things are possible. And you could just shoot me an email and we can make sure to see what works with different schedules. For those of you who have students who might be particularly interested in international communications and marketing, our fall internship application closes July 11th. Remote work is possible. My current intern is in Atlanta. My next intern is going to be in Oregon. So we're happy to have students from anywhere in the world. It doesn't have to be here in our office in DC. And as much as we're able to, we do provide a small stipend to help make it an affordable possibility for students. So with that in mind, I will turn the floor over to you all. Please let Stephanie or I know what questions you might have or things you're wrestling with, things students ask you that maybe you're not sure where to guide them or how to send them in the right direction.
I may add just a couple of things to piggyback on what you've already just said, Carmen. One site I want to just kind of share with advisors, and a question that I get a lot about: where can students find international opportunities, perhaps maybe all in one place? And there's a site called Going Global that a lot of career service offices generally have subscriptions to. So I would encourage you to check with your college's career services office to see if they have a subscription to Going Global, because they have a lot of international opportunities posted, both full-time and internships as well. So that's something, a resource I just wanted to share with some of the advisors here, and I'll post the web link to the website there. You already mentioned about the importance of pursuing fellowships and scholarships, and the one caveat I will say about that is, and I know it's difficult to get first and second year students to think about this, but a lot of these, or a good number of the fellowships do offer, the applications processes begin starting their sophomore or their junior year. And so the earlier you can get that information in front of them, the stronger they can make their application and be more competitive. So that's just something else to keep in mind as you look through that fellowships and scholarships link that Carmen shared. I also want to mention the use of alumni associations. We both talked a little bit about the importance of networking. And so having students talk to alumni is really important. And connecting them with the alumni association from your university or your college, or any connections that you as an advisor might have with alumni, or maybe faculty might have with alumni, getting them in front of students is certainly important, so they can make those connections and possibly do informational interviews to help them kind of see what some of their opportunities might be, and how to talk to with the alumni about how they can best prepare for future employment or future career management. So also using LinkedIn is also important. I just wanted to touch base with a little bit of information about that. One last thing, and it came up a little bit when we talked about, Carmen, when we talked about the importance of their personal statement. There really is an emphasis on knowing and telling your story, the importance of storytelling. And that's a skill that can be developed through networking, through informational interviewing, through the interviewing process. Being able to tell your story, what your passion is, what your purpose is, and being able to sell that. And so as students are talking to alumni or talking to peers or doing, research and doing internships, building what that story is and helping create their own brand, that is what makes them stand out to employers. So just keep all of that in mind as we advise our students, helping them craft what their story is.
Stephanie, one question I'd be curious to get your opinion on while our colleagues share their thoughts and questions in the chat box. We've talked a lot about finding local opportunities to do global work. Mm-hmm. Besides the mayor's office and local government, are there other organizations you know of that help students connect that local and global, that glocal, which is a term that I don't particularly like, but there it is, opportunities so that they can do this without having to leave their community?
Chambers of Commerce, that has been something that we've worked with locally here in Atlanta. Our Metropolitan Atlanta Chamber of Commerce has always been helpful in helping students find opportunities that have some sort of global event. If it's with a company that has just a headquarters in Atlanta, or a North American headquarters in Atlanta and it really does global work, or they just have an office in Atlanta. So the Metropolitan Chambers of Commerce, if there is like a World Affairs Council in your city, they generally have connections with consular offices that might be nearby. Now, I know that's not always the case in smaller cities, but like a city in Atlanta, surprisingly, has a number of consular offices. So working with, the World Affairs Council or any of the consular offices in the city might be able to provide opportunities to work internationally with the global focus. So those are a couple that come to mind right away. And speaking of chambers of commerce, I also know, I have to look up the website, but AmCham, the American Chamber of Commerce, generally has offices internationally. And a lot of times those AmCham offices will offer internships internationally. So students, if they're looking to study abroad and maybe tack on an internship, to seek out the local AmCham office. If I can find that website, I'll find it and post it. They might have internship opportunities in other countries to work with American businesses that are overseas.
And Jim notes that just about every city has a refugee assistance program, which are also always in need of volunteers. Mm-hmm. Kelly had a question. She said, this is very helpful and great advice, especially for strong students. What career advice do we give to lower performing students whose grades make them less or not competitive for graduate schools, fellowships, internships, and other things?
Well, that certainly becomes a question of time management, because if their grades are certainly not what is so stellar about them, well, how is their involvement, or what does their leadership look like? And that also, again, becomes an issue of time management. If they're not performing well in school, they may or may not have time to take on an involvement or leadership role. But other areas, if they're volunteering or they're involved in some sort of group activity or organization at school, that can certainly make them stand out if their grades are not so high. So we would encourage that. But again, you want to talk with them about, what might be their struggle point, or what they might be finding challenging, so that you can certainly help assess and meet that need as well. That's what I have seen. Students who may not have the most high GPA certainly might be involved in something or developed an interest in something, or even doing research. A lot of times the research professor, and that has no effect on their grade. So therefore, they might be able to develop an interest area or pursue a minor in something else that really does interest them, and they really perform well in their minor. That might be an area that they can promote as well.
And there may be internships or volunteer opportunities to get them into the field that perhaps aren't requiring high writing skills or language skills yet. So it could be volunteering on an interpersonal level, or even if they excel at something that is more concrete, task-oriented, like in a food bank or something like that, can be a way to start to get them some experience and ignite that interest that then can continue the conversation about how that interest in working in a food bank can lead to a conversation about combating hunger, can lead to a conversation about jobs combating hunger, can lead to, and sort of take them down that journey too. And Andrew, it says, suggests maybe a professional certificate instead of a full-out grad school program could also be a possibility. And Stephanie, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Professional certifications, certainly, and that goes also back to association links. A lot of times, you might want to encourage them to look at the student rates for different associations that might be connected to their major or whatever particular field of interest they're interested in. So if they have student rates, they can join as a student member, and then also perhaps look at potential certifications through those organizations as well.
And there's a lot of groups that have highly specialized groups. So women in international transportation, or African Americans interested in cybersecurity. So helping a student think about all the ways to define themselves can also help them think about different associations and affiliation groups to look for and sign on to. And there's a lot of funding sometimes associated with those different conceptions of self as well.
Right, exactly. So I just posted the AmCham directory. They can search by any country or region to see where a U.S. Chamber of Commerce might be.
And a lot of other countries, much as the U.S. has chambers of commerce in other places, a lot of other countries have chambers of commerce here in the U.S. For anybody who's in the Chicago area, for example, the Swedish American Chamber of Commerce is quite active in that part of the world. So if you had a student who had ethnic ties or historical ties or just a general interest in a particular place, there may be some ways to capitalize on that interest and experience locally using the reverse as well.
Exactly. It's a very good point, because I know here in Atlanta we have a very strong German American Chamber of Commerce and a very strong French American Chamber of Commerce that we partner with quite often. And they provide internships for our students.
Another great group is the Rotary. And what's particular, there's two nice things about the Rotary. They happen to be in a lot of places, big and small, worldwide. They often have meetings and internships and good chances for networking, but sometimes they also come with little opportunities to score some pots of money. So maybe $500 here or $1,000 there that could help a student do a week-long trip abroad to give them some of that international exposure, or to pull off a project that they've been thinking about. So it's not a ton of cash, but it can be a small pot of catalytic funds to really move an idea forward that then the student can use to sell themselves as someone with project management or leadership experience, or that time abroad, or language study, or something in their community. So it can sometimes be a really nice thing on the hyper local level. Even a small town like the one I grew up in has its own Rotary and other kinds of clubs. So if you're not in a big city like Atlanta, you can usually access that there as well.
Okay.
So we are almost at time. Now's a great chance if you have any other burning questions for Stephanie or myself. I'm not seeing anybody typing, but if you are a quick typist, now's a great chance to finish that off. I want to thank everybody for being here and being a part of this conversation. As I said, we will have a recording of the webinar as well as the slides afterwards if folks would like to shoot me a quick email. And again, here it is. I'm happy to share all of this content with you. And if you'd like, I'm happy to find a time to come schedule a chance to webinar directly with your students, or if you're here in DC or any of the cities that we're going to be in, please feel free to reach out. We will be in Europe in November, I believe 789 or 678, one of those, and all of the dates will be up soon on our website at apsia.org/events. And if you are in Texas or Michigan or Ohio or any of those great places, please do get in touch with us and share the fact that we're coming with your students. We would love to meet them and have them get a chance to really get some personal time with our schools to answer any questions they might have. Thank you all very much, and I do hope that we will see you and your students at future APSIA events. Have a great rest of your day, however much of it is left.